Hey guys, so I figured that since we're getting towards the end of Spooky Month, what better way than to wrap it up with the end of the stories about my dental trauma and about my absolute horror when it comes to the dentist. Now this is going to be, it should be the final part of this, unless there might be little side stories later on that come up, maybe if anything additional comes to mind, which it might, because you never know what trauma this might unearth that I just have completely blocked out from my brain, because our brains do that. Now, what we're going to get into is all the other things that have happened to my teeth at this point. Like I have before, I'm going to give a quick trigger warning with this. If you have any dental trauma that you cannot handle hearing about, other people's, I would recommend maybe not watching this video, especially if you've had a lot of issues and it's a really bad trigger for you. I would advise maybe one of the other more lighthearted videos that I've done, because I know even though I have a lot of dental trauma, I enjoy listening to other people's videos, but at the same time, I know not everybody's that way. Other people prefer to stay as far away from their phobias as possible. I have this weird morbid desire to listen to others just because, oh thank God I'm not alone in all this horribleness. I'm sorry it happened to you, but I'm glad to not be alone. But I did want to give that trigger warning real quick, like I have especially in the last one, because I think, yeah, that was the really bad one. So I do want to give that, especially because there is a similar experience in this one as there was to the last one. And I'm not going to lie, I want to explain it as specifically as possible, so I'm probably not going to be pulling any punches with this. Now, with that out of the way, and let me just say real quick, I'm not going to be doing a hey what you drawing for this one, just because this one and my next one, which will be a Halloween video, I am kind of recording the audio before I actually record the video footage. And admittedly, I'm a little nervous here lately because my computer is starting to act like it wants to just quit on me when it comes to, it already completely quit on editing. Like, I'm already having to edit things with Andy's computer, and I'm having to put my stuff on a flash drive and go and just edit it on Andy's computer over there. And I'm hoping that at least until I can get the parts for my new PC and get it built, I am really, really hoping that my laptop will last until then, at least for getting my art footage. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do, and everything might have to go on hiatus for a while, and I don't want that. But now that we're past that, let's get into the horrible, awful dental disasters. Okay, let's go. So first thing I'm gonna jump into here is I have had a root canal. Now this one isn't as bad. This is just part of the whole thing of my teeth are awful and they hate me, so I had to have a root canal. Now, thankfully, I was in 10th grade when this happened. Thankfully though, this dentist did let my mother come back with me despite the fact that I was in 10th grade, so I was like 15, 16, but I was also terrified, and I was going to have to sit there for ages, and I hated it, because in case you didn't know, root canals tend to take a long time, and you sit there, and it was in like an upper molar towards the back, so he had to put this thing in there to keep bits of tooth from going down the back of my throat, and it felt like essentially having a balloon stretched across your mouth, and your mouth is like clamped open so you can't shut it, and depending on how bad it is and how long it takes, you can be sitting there for a couple of hours like that, and it sucks. Because you don't really get a break whenever that happens. You don't, because it's not like he can just, you're only numb for a certain amount of time, and that's bad enough getting numbed. But I will say the worst part about that one, because for the most part it was uneventful, except that, they didn't even gas me and I'm like freaking out. But the worst part about that one was that it was an upper molar and it was a root canal, meaning it's got to be numbed very deep, because your roots go pretty deep into your jaw. And sometimes on your upper teeth, your roots can go higher than you expect them to, sometimes reaching up close to your sinus cavity. Now mine weren't that high, but they went high enough that, well, in order to properly numb it, and we found this out after I started to feel some pain while he was working, so he had to do some additional numbing. This is the first thing that goes along with the trigger warning. I'm going to be very blunt with this. And it was very painful. Of course, he had to get the needle back out to numb my mouth. And if you think getting stuck like in the back of your mouth or in just along the gum line is bad, this might be my personal opinion. However, to me, the worst spot to ever actually have to get numbed is to have that needle stuck into the roof of your mouth. Now that's awful, and it hurts so much worse than any other numbing I have ever experienced to this day. And of course that freaked me out and I about came out of the seat. Now beyond that, that was really the worst trauma that I had from the root canal, because for the most part it went routine. The only thing is I never ended up going back to get a crown on it. Not that it actually matters now, and I'll get into why in a minute. But thankfully the root canal went pretty quick. And I don't think, other than a couple of toothaches and I think maybe an extraction, I don't think I had to have much else done with my teeth for the rest of high school, aside from, your routine checkups and occasional fillings. Now once I got out of high school, and I think I mentioned this before, my teeth just didn't develop right. No matter what I did with them, there was no keeping them intact. No matter what I did. No matter how hard I fought to, they just would start to crumple. And now that started coming to a head whenever I went to the dentist. I think it was in maybe my second year of college. And this was not the same dentist that I went to for the filling. But they did the typical x-rays. They saw some fillings that I needed done. Now to give you an idea of how frustrating my teeth were, I had to have 12 fillings. 12. And I think they were going to break them up into upper and lower teeth. And no, they were separating them into the different sides of my mouth. And that was all well and good. And thankfully this place actually, gave me the nitrous, which was good because at the very least I wasn't debating coming out of the seat just because my brain wouldn't cooperate long enough to get me out of that chair. However, one thing that happened was apparently there was a cavity that went a lot deeper than the x-ray showed. And in the process of drilling to get all of the infection and get all of the cavity out, well, apparently it went deep enough and it hit live nerve. I won't say that's the worst pain I've ever felt, because it's not, but it hurt so bad that if I remember correctly, I screamed and I freaked out, obviously. Drilling and you hit nerve that's not numbing, that is awful. And of course it freaked me out, and it took a while to get me calmed down, long enough that I had to be numbed again, aside from needing to numb it deeper anyway for the filling. But as it turned out, it was just short of root canal deep. But it didn't show on the x-ray that. Now thankfully the rest of the filling, once I'd been numbed properly, went fine, and so did the others. And I wish I could say that that was the end of my tooth troubles. But it wasn't, and honestly, of the actually really traumatic ones, I think that one is the tamest of the last few. Now as I said, my teeth started to really fall apart. Now I did get my wisdom teeth out, largely because they needed to come out because they were pressing on the roots. They wouldn't come through, and they were pressing on the roots of a few of my other teeth and angling them oddly and causing them to shift in a way that was very painful. So I had to be put under for those, and unlike a lot of people, I don't react really funny to being put under. I think I mentioned that in the last one, no, in the first one where I was put under for a filling. I come out of it pretty quickly. The most I did was I told my dad that there were 2 of him when he walked up, and I think that was a combination of the anesthesia wearing off and me not wearing my glasses again yet, because, fun fact, I can't see hardly anything without my glasses. But having my wisdom teeth out was largely uneventful. The only problem was that, as I said, my teeth had been tending to fall apart, and as such, they had a lot of infection. And my eye teeth, those are the teeth, they're not your canine teeth, they're between your front teeth and your canine teeth. You've got one on either side of your front teeth, up top. And I had an incident where one broke off, and it literally just broke. It came off at the gum line, and I'd known for a while that my teeth were bad. If the whole time that I had been going to the dentist, it was never a matter of when my teeth would have to come out, my permanent teeth. And this was even when we were younger, just because they could see the way they were developing, with the x-rays. It was never a matter of if they would need to come out. It was always a matter of when they would need to come out. There was honestly, I never went to a single dentist who spoke like I would always have my teeth. It was always framed as, eventually, they're going to have to come out. So I had one break off, and I had bitten down into something soft. It hadn't even been anything hard, and it just snapped. And that in itself was traumatic. When you have a whole tooth break off, that's traumatic, especially when you have a lot of trauma tied to your teeth. It is enough to just, honestly, it made me burst into tears immediately, especially because it wasn't like I bit down on anything hard. I bit down on something soft, and it just broke off. It just absolutely snapped off. And I had a freak out. I panicked. I burst into tears. And I remember I called my mom, and she got me set up for before too long to just go ahead and get my upper teeth out because they needed to anyway at this point. And I was relieved it had been an eye tooth and not one of my front teeth because they looked like they were about to snap. Because no matter what I did, they were wearing away right at the gum line and leaving big divots right along the gum line. No matter how hard I brushed, no matter how I tried to take care of my teeth, they just were crumbling away there specifically, in other places too, but there specifically. And then I think it was a couple days later, I was eating a pancake. I was eating a pancake at work, and my other eye tooth broke off. And of course, again, I freaked out and I got upset, and even worse because I was at work. The other one was already noticeable, but now I had a missing tooth on either side of my front teeth. And it also hurt really badly, obviously, when it snapped, because there were just enough nerves that weren't dead in it for it to hurt when it snapped off. And it hurt bad. And again, I got home, I was in tears already at work, and I had to go and hide for a bit to calm down. And I got a hold of my mom, I told her what happened, and I was freaking out, and she was able to get it set up for me to within a couple of days, get my upper teeth removed. And like I said, that in and of itself was very traumatic, because especially being, in like right at your mid-20s, and having to have all of your upper teeth removed, especially when you've had nothing but trauma from your teeth, it's distressing. And I will say, I calmed down a bit afterwards once they were gone, but the sad thing is one of the reasons I calmed down after they were gone was because, well, I was in a lot less pain. Pain that I didn't even realize I was in. It was awful pain that was just so constant that my body was used to it. I had so much relief after I got them out. For anybody who hasn't, not only whenever you get your wisdom teeth removed, but also if you get like your upper teeth removed or your lower teeth removed, anything where you get a lot of teeth removed, they give you a big time painkiller for afterwards. I didn't need it. Like, they gave me, I want to say they gave me, like, it was one of the big boy painkillers. And I didn't need it. I didn't need it at all. I was fine. Like, yeah, I had some soreness, mostly from where, there were stitches in my gums. But I was fine. But my teeth were also so bad that a lot of infection had to work its way out of my gums once they were gone. Once the teeth were gone. And for the record, if you have really bad upper or lower teeth and you get them removed, just as a warning, you're likely to have extremely bad breath no matter what you do for a little bit, because especially if there is a lot of infection, because it's got to work its way out, and infection doesn't smell pleasant. It just, no matter what I used, no matter what mouthwash, no matter what antibacterial stuff I used, nothing, it didn't matter. It just had to be that way for a little bit. But I was floored by the fact that I didn't need really anything stronger than just regular ibuprofen, because I had been in such constant pain before that afterwards the healing process and dealing with just having all of my upper teeth out of my head, it barely was sore. It was barely sore at all, because I was in so much pain before that pain after taking away the other was nothing. And I think, at least so far, that one's less traumatic than the last one that I'm going to tell. Because as I said, I don't have upper teeth. I still have my bottom teeth. Once I can afford to, those will be going as well, just because they do need to. And I'm aware of that. It sucks, but it's just the nature of my mouth and the way I developed. And I don't want to be super embarrassed about it, because it's nothing that I could have helped. It's nobody's fault. It just happened, and I think that things like that really shouldn't be held to a standard of being embarrassing, because it's not like it's anything that you did. Sometimes these things just happen and are outside our control. But I will say this last story was probably not the most traumatic. The most traumatic one was the one as a kid with the dentist who really should not have been treating kids. But this one is probably, I'll say this one was the second most traumatic, because it's very similar to that instance. And this is the one where I'll probably be getting pretty graphic about it, just because I feel the need to give you a real idea of how it was, to be detailed in my explanation. So, just a couple of years ago, you know how in the story about having a tooth removed with no numbing, it was still the baby tooth version, but it was one of my molars on the right side. Well, it was two of them. Well, a couple years ago, I had the permanent tooth version of one of the same teeth get abscessed. Yeah, here we go. Tooth Trauma 2 Electric Boogaloo. It's the same friggin' tooth, just the adult version of it this time. And, well, first off, there is one dental company who I won't say, but it's known to be a really cheap one, and it's around here and it starts with an A. And it's one that I know a lot of people go to, but I never will. Because this thing was abscessed, it needed to come out. It needed to just come out of my head and just be done. So I called them first because they're like, we take walk-ins, we're quick to get appointments. And this was one of those, it was so abscessed that I could not speak. I couldn't talk because the tiniest bit of air going over the tooth, or even just the way that the muscles in my cheek moving from when I spoke, it hurt, like horribly, horribly, horribly. I couldn't put my teeth together, I couldn't close my mouth all the way, but I couldn't breathe through my mouth because that hurt. And it was winter, so it was cold outside to make matters worse. So that made it even worse, especially because when you have bad teeth, they'll get very extremely temperature sensitive. So that made it 10 times worse. And so I called this one dental place. It's known for being fairly quick. I tell them, look, I need to be seen. When can you get me in? I have an abscess that I'm pretty sure needs to come out. And I get it, they're dentists. They assume I'm being dramatic or whatever. But they tell me, well, first we need to get you set up with an x-ray appointment and we'll tell you what needs done with your mouth. Now keep in mind, I had already been to the doctor. I had gone through antibiotics, and just like last time, it did nothing. I had gone through antibiotics, and it did nothing. The abscess was still there, and it was horrible. So, they tell me, assuming that I'm being dramatic, at least that's the only guess I have, they tell me, well, we need you to come in for an x-ray and a checkup, and we'll tell you what needs done with your teeth. Now, first off, I'm in excruciating pain, but I'm like, I don't care. If you can get me in soon, then fine. They'll be like, well, we have an opening in January. From what I recall, now keep in mind, I'd already told this lady I was in excruciating pain, and she was having to ask me to repeat myself because I couldn't move my mouth enough properly to talk, and I told her that. This was more than a month away. When I'm in that much pain, do not tell me, oh, we'll tell you what needs done with your teeth, but you're going to have to wait more than a month before we can even so much as see you. You know, so you're just gonna have to deal till then. I don't do this often, but I hung up on her. I did. I hung up on her. I called my usual dentist, told him what was going on, and I hadn't called him first because I figured the other place would be quicker, and I wanted to call there because if they were quicker, then I could go ahead and get it gone. Thankfully, if I remember right, the dentist that I actually went to got me in literally the next day, like the next morning. It was either the next morning or it was that morning. I want to say it was the next morning. So thank God he was able to get me in quick. That was nice. I will never go to that other dental place, and I'm sorry, just because of, you know, corporations being jerks, I can't say the name of the place. You know how we do. All I will say is I'm just gonna call that place Tree Dental. Okay, Tree Dental. That's what I'm gonna call it. It's not their actual name. So yeah. But so I go and my partner drives me because honestly there is no way that I would have been able to drive properly with the amount of pain I was in. So they get me in, they get me back there, and they numb me. I'm already freaking out because this place doesn't gas you, but I need this tooth out of my head, okay? Because it was awful. It was hurt. It was painful. And here I go. They numb me. They let me sit for a bit just so that the numbing can take effect. And he takes one of the dental tools and kind of nudges it. I can still feel it. So he numbs me again, gives it a bit, touches it, and initially it's not bad. I'm like, okay, it's probably just pressure, because it's always what they tell you is you're not feeling pain, you're just feeling a bit of pressure. Well, he started going to remove it, and I can tell you it wasn't pressure. It was not pressure. But at this point, honestly, I needed it out of my head so bad that I didn't say anything, especially since I had gone through it before. When you've gone through something like that before, you're just like, nope, I'm just gonna shut up and deal and let it be over with. But when I tell you that I could literally feel the roots of my tooth splinter away from my jaw, I'm not exaggerating. I'm being 100% honest and upfront and just genuine. I could feel every bit of the roots of that tooth splintering away from my jawbone. And to make matters even worse, I could feel it coming up out of my gums. I could feel when they suctioned out the infection from underneath, because it was another one of those situations was there was no spot to like make an incision and get rid of the infection first. It had to be removed and suctioned out. That was the only way to get rid of the infection. And it hurt so badly that I remember I was just sitting there with tears streaming down my face. But at the same time, once it was out, to give you an idea of how much pain I was in from the abscess before the extraction hurt, but as soon as it was over, the level of pain that I was in dropped from like a 9 to a 3 at most, to give you an example of the difference in pain. And it was just, now to this day, it's still traumatic. Like, it's actually getting me anxious to talk about it now. I don't have any aversion to sharing it with people, but talking about it even gets me anxious. And here I go talking about it on the internet, you know, like a dummy. But I'm honestly glad that I went ahead and went through with getting it out. I don't think that, again, other than like a normal Tylenol on the first day that it was out, I didn't need any pain medicine because it was such a relief compared to before. And I know I've said this before, but I absolutely hate going to the dentist. Probably the next time that I go, it's going to be for my bottom teeth. And maybe I'll have, I'm hoping I won't have an actual story to share about that, for the record. I'm hoping I won't. If I do, then woo, more dental tales. Let's hope not though, because they will be putting me under for that. They put me under for my upper teeth to come out. They're putting me under for my bottom teeth to come out. I will not hear anything else. That's why I'm having to wait until I can afford it. But I think this is the longest recording I've ever made. But I do want to say that if you're dealing with a lot of dental trauma, you're not alone. I will say that. Just, you know, there are other people who've gone through awful things too, and horrible, awful instances that occur. You're not alone in bad things happening, honestly. And I do want people to know that. But I figured that the terror that I felt in this story was a good one for the end of spooky month. So again, I've asked before, but you know, do you guys have any, you know, dental stories? Actually, you know what? Let's do it this way. Do you guys have any fun Halloween stories? Let's share that where it's getting close to Halloween. You know, next week is Halloween. So do you have any fun Halloween stories? What about favorite costumes or anything like that? Let's make this lighthearted instead of talking about more dental stuff. So, if you guys have any, you know, fun costumes or favorite costumes or anything like that, share them down below. I was always a vampire for Halloween. I might talk about my experiences with Halloween eventually. Maybe I'll save that for next year. I can't remember if I've done it already. But thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you guys for suffering through the dental terror with me. And I know this got very serious at points, but I feel glad that I've shared it, especially because I know that knowing I'm not alone would have been important back whenever I was going through these things. So let's have some fun and talk about fun Halloween things from when we were younger, or if you're young, things you still enjoy. But thank you guys so much for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons, Salmon and Inside Chaos, and I will see you guys next time.